This episode is brought to you by Cellular Performance Institute. Is your body beat up and broken down? Look into stem cells today. It could change your life. Go to cellularperformanceinstitute.com. January 24th, I'll be in 10th Planet Boca Raton teaching jiu-jitsu. Go to @10th Planet Boca Raton on Instagram for more information. Join Sam Tripoli and I on the road for Tinfoil Hat Comedy. Go to samtripoli.com for tickets. See you on the road.
I can't believe I won.
And you still got people out there with double masks and face shields and shit. Look into it.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Look Into It. Tonight, we're getting into everything: politics, health, virus, COVID, with the greatest doctor of all time, Dr. Andrew KAUFMAN. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Eddie. It's great to see you.
I wish there was more doctors like you.
Me too. I'd have more friends.
Oh man. So basically what happens is once you start telling the truth, they pull your license, or you just don't, you just opt out on your own, or how did that work?
Well, for me, I just opted out. I just, fortunately, it was up for renewal like about 6 months after I full-fledged changed my career during COVID, or got ousted into changing my career. So I just did not renew it.
That's a very courageous move. That's a lot of, I'm sure you took a big hit financially, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't really been able to regain that specific level of income, but I feel much better about what I'm doing now. And so I wouldn't go back or trade it. In fact, I can't get rid of them, but there are tons of recruiters that keep reaching out to me, offering me all kinds of jobs, as a psychiatrist.
Yeah. There's, lately what's been going on, with Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, when you speak the truth on a large platform, that's gotta, cross your mind every now and then. Like, man, is my life in danger? Am I on some kind of list? You know what I mean? It's like,
so have you ever heard about, there's a whole group of natural healing or alternative doctors. They're not all doctors, but who, died at the prime of their life in mysterious circumstances. Like Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez is one of the most famous examples. And he was an MD working with people with cancer, but based on, mostly nutrition. Kind of therapy, had great results, and then he suddenly died of a heart attack when he was in the prime of his health. And there are many other examples. Anne Baroka, you can even find articles. So I knew about this before I decided to come out of the closet, so to speak, as a recovering physician. And I even had a consultation with a defense expert. Someone who would be like a high-level bodyguard, I suppose, about, what are the risks, how could I protect myself and such. And I arrived at the conclusion that there's nothing I can really do. Like if, some sophisticated, agent or operative wanted to take me out, they would be able to. And so I just accepted that reality, realizing that, it's more important to do what I was doing than to worry about those consequences. And then also, after talking to some people who were perhaps on the inside about some of these incidents, I knew that there generally is a warning that you receive before any action is taken. So, I I keep waiting for that to happen, but although I don't really think about it anymore, but nothing like that has occurred. So I feel, pretty fortunate that although I face a lot of censorship, I don't feel like I'm in any danger, except from some maybe disgruntled, half truthers out there who just looking for any target, in the public eye. I'm sure you have a few of those as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, back in the 2000s, I wasn't really into daily politics at all. Like I just figured, the Bushes were demons, and so were the Clintons, and JFK got assassinated by not by Lee Harvey Oswald. I was into that. I wasn't really into daily politics. I was fascinated with Bill Clinton's life. And, while he was governor in Arkansas and all the stuff, the Mena, Arkansas stuff, all the cocaine that was coming through Mena, Arkansas, and specifically all the people that died around the Clintons. I was fascinated with that. And this was in the 2000s.
Well, look, this stuff goes really deep. I mean, I think even the Oklahoma City bombing is implicated with the Clintons.
Yeah, I mean, according to a podcast I saw with a supposed uh, assassin. Uh, his name is Corey Snodgrass, I think.
Yeah. So I think we both saw the same guy.
Yeah, yes,
right. And he worked with the guy, the official guy that they blamed it on. Was it Timothy something?
Timothy McVeigh. I don't remember that.
Yes.
All I remember from what he said was he was former military and did jobs internationally. Never really did
Right.
any assassinations domestically, and then he got offered the Oklahoma City job, and I don't know exactly what his job was. Maybe it was to help Timothy McVeigh make it happen, or whatever. I'm not too sure exactly what his job was, but he got offered the job and he turned it down because he didn't want to have any, he didn't want to be responsible for any Americans dying. So he declined, and he knew if he declined that they'd come after him. So he disappeared and went underground for a while because he knew they were going to pay him a visit. And then he resurfaced and started doing some podcast stuff, and that's where I heard him. And he said Oklahoma City, part of the main reason they blew up that federal building was to destroy all the medical data from this lawsuit against the Pentagon. It was like some from the Iraq War, from Desert Storm. There was all these military personnel that were coming down with cancer, and there was this massive lawsuit. I don't know how much it was, billions or maybe trillions.
So this is like related to Gulf War syndrome. Yeah. I mean, that's what they call it in the Veterans Administration system.
Yeah. So he said all the records were put in the Oklahoma City federal building that exploded, and so all the records were gone, and that was it. So that was the end of that lawsuit. But Corey Snodgrass also said that they threw some other files in there too, and was it the Whitewater scandal with the Clintons? Is that Whitewater, right?
It could be.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
It was some.
But this was something in Arkansas when he was governor, right? That you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
It was like this scam he was running.
Yeah.
With I think the basic scam was he'd sell senior citizens like condos or townhomes, and as soon as they missed a payment, they took the property back, and they just kept doing that over and over. And it was like this major scandal, something like that. It was a Clinton scandal that was also blown up in the Oklahoma City. I don't know. It could be all bullshit. I don't know. But You know, I don't doubt any crazy thing like that. You know, I don't need that much evidence. I'm like, it makes sense. We're dealing with a criminal government, like most governments. Like, you know, I don't really need that much evidence. You know what I mean?
Right. If you're like some kind of, crazy terrorist and you want to, blow up something important, it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be some random federal building in the Midwest, right? You would go to DC or you do a national monument or something like that,
Yeah, yeah. So I was really into that. I was into there's always these new detectives in Arkansas, and they're like, they're doing some investigations on some suspicious suicides, and then they always lead to they get closer and closer to Bill Clinton and his crew, and then they die. First, they get warned. They go, stay away from this case, and then they end up, committing suicide with 2 bullet wounds in the back of their head. And there's so many of those. And now it's like super fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, this guy's president. Holy shit.
Well, he knows how to get things done, Eddie.
Yeah. So that really scared the shit out of me. So when I started, when Joe Rogan's podcast started blowing up, it's like the early 2010s or something. We would talk about it because that's what we were into. We weren't really into daily politics. I didn't even know who our governor was or our mayor. I just figured it was all bullshit. I'm like, okay, the Democrats and the Republicans, they're all full of shit. I mean, the Bushes were Republicans and they were super demons. And then you look at Bill Clinton and Obama, So I just thought, okay, it's like they say, it's 2 wings of the same fucking dragon, or what is it saying?
Well, bird. They're talking about the eagle.
But 2 wings of the same vampire bat. So I didn't pay attention, but when we started, just shit talking on JRE, I would say a lot of stuff. I would bring up, the Clintons every now and then, and the Bushes, and 9/11. I was all into 9/11 and JFK and all that. And I was really worried about being targeted. Even back then, this was like early 2010. I remember after doing a Joe Rogan podcast, I'd be driving home, looking over my shoulder, looking out for black helicopters. I'm like, man, I got to shut up about this. They're gonna suicide me. And then, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we had all these people waking up to the horrors of our government. And, like Candace Owens, Russell Brand, even like Tucker Carlson, and all these people waking up. And now I'm like, okay. They don't know how dangerous it is what they're doing. But I didn't want them to stop talking. I go, now it's your turn. You guys talk. So I kind of just like, I semi-retired. I know how dangerous shit is. And like, look what happened to Charlie Kirk. Look what's going on with Candace Owens. That's some serious shit. Like she would go off so hard, Candace. I just watch her going, wow, I can't believe how brave she is. She's so brave. She doesn't know it. It's almost like like if you're living in the northern Mexico, like the border in the United States, like that's all. Most of Mexico is run by the cartel, but especially in the border, or along the border. And it's like if you lived there, you wouldn't get on Facebook talking all sorts of shit on a particular cartel members. Your house would get burnt down immediately. They would cut the heart out of your children and videotape it and send it to you before they killed you. Nobody.
Right. Well, look, it's the same thing. If you had a pizzeria in New York City and you were tired of buying your boxes and cheese only from them, you wouldn't be complaining about it on Facebook because the consequences.
Yeah,
but
it's the same thing.
Exactly.
A cartel is running this whole country. We have a cartel.
Probably the whole world.
Yeah, so you gotta be careful. Like you can't just, there's a lot of guys out there saying, hey, you should have more courage and you should get out there and do more. I'm like, yo, I'm trying to stay alive. I recognize that we are actually in a prison. The United States is just the best minimum security prison out there. But regardless, it's still a prison. This prison, they let us have guns and they let us talk shit, most prisons, they don't let you talk shit and they don't let you have guns, but this is a crazy prison. This is the best prison in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right?
I'm confused why people feel that they're better off moving to Central America or Mexico or places like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's nowhere to go. And like the ultimate place to go in regards to true freedom, like people are talking about like true freedom. You want true freedom? You can go there. You could go move, go live in the Congo. Go live in the jungle. Go deep in the jungle. You don't have any government there at all. But you know what? Eventually, you're gonna witness yourself being eaten alive. That's the trade-off. That's the trade-off. Like, do you live in a city and probably get cancer? That's probably how you're gonna go with cancer or like heart disease, or live in the jungle. You're free as hell. You can do whatever you want, but eventually you're gonna witness yourself being eaten alive. And your kids, if you have kids in the jungle, you're probably gonna watch them get eaten by a jaguar too. Nobody dies of old age in the jungle. You get eaten.
Stem cells, they could do some wild shit down there.
I got the stem cells in my shoulder. My shoulder was jacked. I went down there, it worked, man.
Eric Anders' neck was up, and then he went down and got stem cell treatment. Now it doesn't bother him at all anymore.
I definitely recommend CPI. It's changed my life. The best stem cell clinic in the world.
I just come and I do stem cells to make sure that I'm resetting my body and staying healthy.
It regenerates tissue, reduces inflammation. The results are amazing.
CPI stem cells is where you want to go. There's no other place in town. They do the best work in the world. I feel incredible.
If there's anything causing you to not live the quality of life that you like, then this investment is more than worth it.
When it comes to the science of stem cells, no one comes close to CPI. There's not even a close second.
For a free doctor call to see if stem cells is the right option for you, visit us at cpistemcells.com.
Well, this is why humans started living in groups, so they could protect against things like that. But not all of the wilderness is quite as harsh as the African jungle. I'm the land I'm living on, for example. Like I purposely picked out a piece of land that I could be completely self-sufficient on. Now, I may not be free, be able to go anywhere and do anything, just like the same thing with that, living in the middle of the jungle in Africa, on your own land, you may be completely free if you're not dependent on any outside resources, but you're not free that you could go anywhere and do that, right? I mean, that's true freedom, other than obviously someone else's private property, but I mean, travel freely around, if you want to be in the jungle of Ecuador, or if you want to be in the forests of Nova Scotia, it's your choice where you'd want to go, as long as you could, find appropriate space for yourself there. So.
Yeah. So you live on a farm?
Well, no, not on a currently working farm, but I have the land that could be farmed. And actually, even without it, I have enough hunting land that I could sustain myself, just on wild animals. I have springs on the property, so I would have plenty of drinking water without they spontaneously come out of the ground, so there's no need for electricity. And then I have plenty of firewood to harvest. Actually, already cured firewood. I have enough for a couple of winters probably, and then a major fireplace in the main house and a wood stove in the barn as well. So I have all the everything I need to live that way. I'm not living that way currently because I'm trying to be an educator and teach everyone about health and talk about all these other subjects, and that takes up my time. But if I had to, I wanted to be prepared to be able to survive indefinitely that way, not just having a bunch of canned food in the basement, but, actually being able to thrive and survive. So I'm pretty well outfitted to do that if I needed to. And, I have seeds and all that stuff as well. And I'm connected with the other local farmers in the community.
Are you currently hunting?
No, not actively. I mean, it is, I think, deer season actually right now, technically. But no, I have a little bit of experience with that. So I'd be able to do it if I needed to, but I'm not doing it regularly.
So have you ever hunted?
Yeah.
And what's the biggest game you've taken down? Deer?
Deer, yeah. I mean, I did like bird hunting a few times, and then deer, like duck hunting.
Oh, nice. You are prepared.
Yeah.
You're like Joe Rogan.
I'm actually, my marksmanship is pretty good.
Oh, nice. Nice. So if shit went down, you got enough wood for heat. You got enough, you got water. That's all you really need is heat and water, right? And then you got to go hunt.
Heat, water, and food, yeah.
Yeah. So you could just survive on heat, water, and hunting.
Yeah.
You had to. Man, I know I got to get into hunting, but it's just so hard for me. I don't know.
Well, have you done any shooting?
Yeah. I go to the range and shoot a piece of paper. But
all right, so that's a start because we're just getting comfortable with firearms and how to handle them safely. That's that's how you can start. And then
for sure,
if you gotta appreciate that if you eat meat at all, right? Which I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah.
Every piece of meat that you're eating was an animal who had to be killed, right?
Or was human.
Well, it depends where you eat.
That? What do you think about that? I mean, that is getting bigger and bigger, and it makes sense. I used to think that. I'm like, how is McDonald's serving billions of burgers? Like, where are all these cows at? And how many burgers can you make with one cow? Have they done the numbers?
Well, you see how thin their burgers are, so it doesn't take a lot for one of their burgers, but. I mean, it's certainly possible. We've got enough predictive programming about it, right? With soil
and the government the government's definitely evil enough to do that. Not like the low level government, but like whoever's running everything, the people that are in charge, they would have no problem serving the peasants, us, human meat, right? It would.
Yeah, I would assume it's even part of a ritual. Like, one of the topics I've been talking about, and you may have seen some of this on Instagram, is about organ transplantation is really, in my opinion, a human sacrifice ritual.
That is the craziest thing when you find, I mean, is it true? And I just found this out months ago. Is it true that you can only transplant an organ from someone that's living and not dead? If they're dead, the organs are useless. Is that true?
Yeah. So, now this may not be true for like an Achilles tendon or a cornea, but for the major organs, the heart, the lungs, the liver, pancreas, kidneys, they have to be alive at the time they're harvested.
Why is that though? Why don't they, they die and then an hour later they pull it out? Like what?
Yeah, well, as soon as you remove it from the body, it starts dying.
Yes.
Right. The same thing happens, by the way, when if you donate blood. So those blood transfusions, they're rotting flesh. The organs, they've got it, timed to a very a narrow window. So as soon as it comes out of the body, it goes right on ice, because that slows down the dying process and the decomposition. But they, as soon as the blood supply is clamped in the donor's body, then a timer starts, right? And it's got to be in the recipient's body by a certain deadline. So that's the way it works. And, they had to essentially, they had a committee at Harvard to invent the term brain death. And because they needed a way to justify doing this, right? And if they said the person's alive, then you're killing them, right? So they invented this whole term of brain death.
Life support.
Life support is when they put someone on a ventilator or whatever, but they're still alive. Like, you could even be on a ventilator and be conscious, right? So, like, I remember Graves, the Superman guy, Christopher Reeves.
Yeah.
He was on a ventilator for, many years after that horse accident. And he could talk and stuff.
When I find out that you can't transplant organs off a dead body, that made me think, like, life support or brain dead or whatever, because that's what they'll tell, like, the parents of, like,
Yeah, well, that's
say, hey,
that.
it's on life. He's on life support, but he ain't coming back. He's just on life support. I mean, you guys want to keep paying for this, or do we pull the plug? And then after a certain time, they're going to be going, okay, pull the plug. And they actually don't pull the plug. They take the organs first, then they pull the plug, right?
Well, if they're going to harvest the organs, yes, and like they're kind of two separate things, even though they're linked together, like you're talking about, because what they'll tell the parents, let's say it's a child and the parents are making this decision, right, or whoever the next of kin is, what they'll tell them, they'll first evaluate, for this brain death. And if they give the opinion that their son is brain dead, then they're going to tell the parents there's no hope of recovery.
Yeah.
And that, of course, the parents then are going to be much more likely to decide, okay, let's pull him off life support and we'll okay the transplant. Whereas if they say, he's alive, we don't know, what is going to happen in the future, but he's alive. That's a very different thing for the parents to hear and make that decision. So it all centers around this concept of brain death, and this concept is not an actual physiologic thing. Like, they never observed, someone's brain being actually dead, but their body was alive, and then said, how do we distinguish that from people whose brain is still alive? Like, what happened is they had the technology to do transplants. They did the first one in Brooklyn, and they took it from a living baby.
What organ?
I can't. I want to say it's the kidney, but I'm not 100% sure. And then they realized that the public is going to freak out if they hear that they're taking the organs from a living donor. So they organized this committee at Harvard University with the surgeons who wanted to do transplants, and they basically got together and said, how do we justify this to the public? How do we get people to donate organs so we could do this? And they came up with the idea of brain dead. But they just invented it out of the need to justify transplants. They didn't actually observe people and who are, let's say, in a coma or on some kind of life support, and assess their brain function in some way, then observe them until death and see, if the recovery rate or the lifespan was different. They never did that research. They just came up with the term and then agreed on how they were going to assess it. And it's just been, and then it became codified in law. So it's not from, observing what happens to people or from scientific experiments. It's from a political need to justify taking organs to do these transplantations. And it's perpetuated like that since. And even in the medical literature, the neurologists fully acknowledge that it's not evidence-based, that it's opinion-based.
There's got to be. I mean, is there a financial incentive for the actual hospital?
Oh, huge. So,
you money off this?
This goes much deeper than you think. So, transplants are extremely lucrative. And one of the things that people don't realize, even though it's right out of the federal law, that the hospital where they harvest the organs, they sell them. They sell the organs
The hospital.
The hospital does. They sell it either to a organ procurement agency or to the hospital where they're going to put them into the recipient. So they get all kinds of reimbursement for, the surgical procedure of doing the harvesting, the anesthesia for that, et cetera, processing the organ, transplanting the organ. All this is reimbursed like through Medicare and other insurance companies. And so the hospitals are making quite a bit of money. The organ procurement agencies are making money. And then the transplant, there's, of course, all the fees for the transplant surgery, the postoperative care, and then the lifelong care. And the pharmaceutical companies that sell, the immunosuppressive drugs, the anti-rejection drugs that people are dependent on for the rest of their life. And, people after a transplant, it's not like they go back to like normal health. It's like their health, they might live, but their health is impaired, throughout the remainder of their life.
On medication for the rest of their life, right?
Yeah, and many times also in and out of the hospital. I experienced this back when I was in medical school. Well, the anti-rejection meds themselves make them susceptible to other illnesses because it suppresses their immune system. It's like a form of chemotherapy.
Perfect.
Yeah. So in addition to like all that money and lifelong, profit, there's because this is automatically qualified for Medicare. So it's like nobody's uninsured who gets a transplant. If there's no private insurance, the government's paying for it. And then there's the actual fees for the organs, and they pay tens of thousands of dollars depending on with the organ. I think like heart is like $50,000 to buy a heart, and it's like $40,000 for a liver or something. Like I actually I used AI to get these numbers from like hospital annual reports and various government reports like the ACHQ and stuff. To estimate what the amounts they're paying for, but it's totally legal by federal law that they can buy and sell the organs. And I showed this in my videos already.
There's got to be at least one hospital that likes it when they can declare someone brain dead because they just see the dollar signs. Correct.
Oh, I think every hospital is like that pretty much because hospitals in the past they were run by doctors and nurses, but now they're run by MBAs, and just like universities are, right? Which is why tuition is skyrocketed, a separate issue. But so I found out about this when I was doing forensic psychiatry. Because there was a respiratory therapist who worked at a small community hospital in a rural county. And he was asked to do an apnea test on someone, which is a test that supposedly supports brain death, but it's not validated as such. It's just people, they agree that it's useful for this. But if you fail the apnea test, it's supposed to be consistent with brain death, and then they would go on to do the organ harvesting. But in this case, the therapist did the apnea test, and it showed that he wasn't brain dead. And then the surgeon had him do it a second time, and it showed the same result. And so he said, we can't do the transplant, and the respiratory therapist was then kicked out of the room, and they went ahead and harvested the organs. And they buried this guy. Like they basically labeled him as crazy. He went and reported this to the hospital administration, right away. He tried to report it to other agencies, and they just basically said that he was unhinged and put him on, disability, and never did anything to investigate or any impropriety in this, because that's their normal mode of business, is they're going to do the organ harvesting one way or the other.
Has anybody, any hospital ever been sued for harvesting organs unnecessary?
I haven't searched for that specifically, but it's got to have been done, because if you look for news articles, for example, just a general like Google search, you're going to find tons, like dozens and dozens of articles from all over the country where, it's basically my son, my husband, my father was being wheeled to the operating room to have his organs harvested, and he started talking and said to take him away, take him away, or a family member saw someone open and close their eyes and had to like hunt down and convince the surgeon to do further evaluation to find out that it wasn't brain dead. And so the surgery was like just called off at the last minute. You can find just dozens and dozens of examples like that.
For all your 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu merchandise, please visit 10thplanetjj.com/shop. We also got a Look Into It t-shirt that just dropped. Thank you very much for your support. If someone gets in a car accident or whatever, they get taken to the hospital. Do they have to have that donor thing on their driver's license for the hospital to keep an eye on that guy? Or if there's a person that says, I don't want my organs harvested, I'm not going to donate nothing, they're probably more likely to be kept alive, right?
Well, yes and no, because, that is sort of a different issue. The hospital makes something like 5 to 10 times as much money when you die there versus if you go home. So that may be a different calculus for the hospital than if you're going to donate your organs or not. But I'm not sure if it's like this in every state, but in New York, it's become the default that everyone is a donor unless you opt out. And so once I started, learning about this, I wanted to opt out, and I went to DMV, and they told me I had to get in touch with this other agency, which it turns out is an organ procurement agency, and that they are essentially in charge of that. And all that the DMV does is get an instruction to put it on the card or not. And so it took me like a few phone calls to actually get someone on the phone and request to get off the donor list. But, so there's a couple of things. Like if you have a next of kin, that's the most important thing, and make sure that all your next of kin know that you do not want your organs harvested or donated. Because if there's a next of kin, the hospital's always going to get their consent, because that's much safer for them in terms of their liability. If you don't have a next of kin, that's when the information could easily get lost, and the hospital could just assume that you're a donor. So definitely important on your license that it says you're not a donor. In fact, you could even have like a card or a piece of paper you put in your wallet that you sign and even notarize if you want. You could also file your living will and record that in your local county. I'm not sure if the hospital will necessarily access it there, but that would still be good evidence if something went wrong. You could mail a copy, to the hospital, and I would definitely send it to their risk management department and their medical records department so they could have it on file. Because they do check, like sometimes if there's like an advance directive, on file when someone checks into the hospital, like do not resuscitate order or something like that. So there should be a way that the hospital can have it on file, and that would be the medical records department.
Man, how scary are hospitals? Like,
No, they're very scary. I mean, I had to spend a lot of time working in hospitals when I was younger, and it was always a miserable place. Like you could just feel that it was not a place that was good for you.
especially like you just said, if they're making more money with you dead than alive, like fuck, that doesn't seem right. They make more money.
No. And if you're like, this is why what I said before about having doctors and nurses running the hospital, right? Because doctors and nurses, at least part of them cares about what happens to the patients, because that's, ostensibly why they even went into that career. But some bean counter MBA business type, they are interested in the bottom line, like what's more profitable. So what would make sense from their point of view is that if it's more profitable that someone, dies in our hospital, then how can we make more people die here to get more profit? That would make sense, even though it's completely immoral.
That's kind of how COVID went down, right? Didn't they? I mean, is it true? I keep hearing that hospitals got like 26,
So
30K per death.
The government brilliantly manipulated the hospitals during COVID, because if you remember, during the lockdown, they essentially shut down hospitals. Like, they canceled their biggest money makers, like ambulatory surgery was all closed.
What is that?
That's outpatient surgery, where day surgery, you just go and get a procedure and then go home.
Okay.
So you don't stay overnight in the hospital or anything. And it's a lot of like elective procedures. They could do, hernia repairs, nose jobs, facelifts, things like that.
Yeah.
And I knew even in my area, like somebody's spouse who was a PharmD got laid off from the hospital during that time. So they had no revenue, basically, the hospital. And, there were no one with COVID went to the hospital, because there was no real serious COVID. And then people were scared of the hospital because they would get COVID. So they stayed away from it. And then when they reopened things, they basically dangled this big incentive that, hey, when we reopen, if you do these policies and protocols, like, treatment protocols, we're going to give you money. And we're organized this reimbursement scheme that if you follow the COVID clinical protocol, that you're going to make more money than you would normally. So they had incentive for people to be on ventilators. They had incentives to give that, really toxic drug that Fauci had some interest in. I forget the name of it now.
Remdesivir?
Yeah, remdesivir, right, exactly. And so that's why they, even just to test people, they got reimbursed from the government just to test people. So they tested everybody to max out the revenue from that. And anyone who was positive, their goal was to get them on remdesivir and on a ventilator, because that's how they maximized their reimbursement.
And that's what ended up killing them, right? Isn't it a fact that, for a while there in the beginning, like Andrew Cuomo was like, we need ventilators. And then Trump was all like, oh, okay, I'll get you some ventilators. And then then they shut the fuck up about ventilators. And no one ever talked about ventilators. And then if you dig into it, you find that the ventilators were responsible for a lot of those deaths.
Yep. And, it was well known before COVID that if you put people on a ventilator who are breathing, that they don't do well. They get barotrauma from the pressure, fighting against the ventilator. And it's very, very bad prognosis. So, and, there was a whistleblower nurse, I can't recall her name right now, but she was working in that famous hospital in Queens and was talking about how they, that they had like dentists who were managing the ventilator settings on people. And, that's like pretty complicated. Like, not just any doctor does that normally in the hospital. They have specialized, like subspecialists, like they're called intensivists. Like, they first are a pulmonologist or anesthesiologist, then they do further training in intensive care. They're the ones who do the ventilator settings. And they had like dentists who don't even know how to manage a regular floor patient in the hospital, filling in and such. It was just a really crazy time. But I think that whole ventilator was just about creating mortality to so people would take it seriously and be scared.
And it's a insane world that we live in when it comes to the COVID scam. If you went to the hospital, you were way more likely to die than if you just stayed home and treated it like a regular flu and just, had some Campbell's soup and orange juice, right?
Yes, absolutely.
People weren't really dying. People weren't really dying of COVID, which was actually the flu, if they just stayed at home and just wrote.
I mean, look, there are people that die from the flu every year, but do they really die from the flu, or are they really, they're chronically ill, and that's just the straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah.
Like if you look at the most common immediate cause of death, it's going to be pneumonia. But is it really that pneumonia is a scourge, or is it just like these people are basically half dead already, and then pneumonia is just what puts them over the edge into the next realm?
Yeah. It's the numbers for COVID deaths, when you look at the data, who knows if the data is correct, but it's,
well, no, you can't really look at the data, because remember they had the death certificate instructions changed and basically said, like, if there's a whiff of COVID, then you just put COVID as the cause of death.
Yeah.
And so, you had the case in California, Florida, where someone died in a pedestrian was hit by a bus, and they said that they died of COVID.
Yeah. But most of the numbers, who knows if the numbers were right, but there were people did die of something. They all, or most of them, I think it was in the 90% range, that most people that died of COVID had at least 4 comorbidities, which meant they either had cancer or diabetes.
Yeah. Well, that's because those were the things that they actually probably died of, or the treatment for those things. The time when we really had some increase in the death numbers was after the injections came out.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing, is the vaccines. I mean, that I can't believe.
That's why they came up with this idea of long COVID. That was to basically hide the vaccine damage.
Yeah. I mean, like all the stuff that's coming out, like within the last couple of weeks, like there's a study from Japan that came out, and South Korea that came out about, basically in a nutshell, saying that, if you got injected with, 4 shots, you had a couple boosters, you were like way more likely to die of some kind of cancer than if you were unvaccinated. Like there's all these,
so I've seen the presentation on the Japanese data that you're mentioning, and it was a really large data set, done very meticulously in the analysis, and it was all-cause mortality was substantially increased for people who got injections versus those who didn't, and it showed that the mortality was higher based on the number of boosters you got. So it's like that's a dose-response relationship, which makes it a much very stronger case for a causal relationship.
Yeah, it just seems like it seems to me, because I'm crazy, it seems to me that vaccines, when you look at all vaccines, not just the COVID vaccine, you look at all vaccines, it seems like they were never meant to help anybody. They were meant to injure people. Sometimes people died. They probably didn't want the death, but they just it was like Big Pharma wants customers. They need them injured. They need them sick. And that's really what the vaccines are for, just to keep them popping those pills.
I think that's...
It seems like we live in like some kind of satanic, evil world.
It's a very reasonable hypothesis. And I agree, because going all the way back to, the smallpox which was, the first vaccine. It was actually called that, right, because they took pus from cowpox and then, cut you and put the pus in the cut. And, if you actually look at the data, from some European countries like France at that time, that was used, you can see that it actually caused this smallpox. And, in Forrest Moretti is an author, by the way, that has written really excellent scholarship on this topic. He has like 4 books about vaccines, including The Moth and the Iron Lung about the polio vaccine, and several other books that I mentioned. And, he talks about when they were trying to give some kind of vaccine-related treatment for diphtheria around the turn of the century, how the parents didn't want it. They didn't want their kids' arms being cut or injected. And so that's when they started having like a advertising campaign, basically, to convince parents to go along with it. And I think that was just like they were giving some kind of globulin at that time. It wasn't the same exactly as the subsequent vaccines, but, there was all this resistance. And just like in modern times, right, that whole thing where they would have, celebrities or politicians getting their injection on camera, like that came from a marketing professor on a way to get the public to, take more flu vaccines or more vaccines in general.
Yeah, it seems it seems like anytime Big Pharma comes up with a remedy or a cure, it's like an accident. They were actually trying to figure out something else, and then it turns out the side effect was this, and they go, "Oh shit, we could sell it as this." Just like Viagra was supposed to be, they were trying to figure out some kind of like low blood pressure medication or something like that, and it turned out it made your dick hard. So they're like, "Oh shit, let's sell it for that." But
there's a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, and it seems like it doesn't really, like, if they come up with something on accident, like they do, it doesn't matter because they know in the long run it's going to cause some side effects. It's going to fuck you up, and you're going to buy some other kind of shit that we sell. And like these and many people have talked about this before, but it's so mind-boggling because you see it. I watch NFL football. I know it's a way to distract us, but football and sports, it's like the circus. It is designed to distract you so that you don't pay attention to how the rulers are oppressing you. But I do pay attention to all that. So I actually want the distraction just to get me away from it for 3 hours.
Well, look, Eddie, you don't have to justify it. Like if you're aware of the pitfalls of it, right? And there's another agenda with that too, and it's the divide and conquer because it pits, your LA fan versus the San Francisco fans, right?
Yeah. But the one thing about it's the only TV I watch. The only TV I watch is football, and that's like most people these days. Most people don't watch TV, but live football, people watch that shit. So that they got everybody's attention. So the commercials they show during NFL football, any game, any NFL, you got to know that I would say 90% of the commercials, maybe 100, but I would say 90% of the commercials are linked to the people like the satanic forces running this world. Because like when you watch those, every commercial break, there's at least one Big Pharma commercial. And it's always like someone running through the meadows, and like if you got psoriasis or whatever. But once they start listing off the side effects, and many people have talked about it, comedians have talked about it, but it's mind-boggling when they say one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts. Forget about all the other shit. Some of the side effects are like anal bleeding, or you know what I mean, like extreme stomach pain, massive nausea, all that. But when they say suicidal thoughts, you're gonna take something that has a side effect that makes you want to jump off a building, makes you want to fucking blow your, what? And then it's like during football. And they say, it goes, this may cause suicidal thoughts.
Herb quit smoking with Chantix and support. Talk to your doctor about Chantix and a support plan that's right for you. Some people have had changes in behavior, hostility, agitation, depressed mood, and suicidal thoughts or actions while taking or after stopping Chantix. If you notice agitation, hostility, depression, or changes in behavior, thinking, or mood that are not typical for you, or if you develop suicidal thoughts or actions, stop taking Chantix and call your doctor right away.
It's evil. It really is. There's some satanic element to what's going on. I mean, there's no other, it's like, what else could it be?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, I'm glad you brought that up because I've got a couple of anecdotes about it. Like, firstly, like when, that with antidepressants, so in the early 2000s or around there, the FDA put a black box warning on antidepressants for children specifically, saying that they increased suicidal behaviors. Not sure exactly what that meant. It was a little vague, but it was a major thing, right? So I was in residency at Duke in psychiatry at the time, and they had like a special like emergency meeting to tell us about this. And then they told us two things. They said, one, of course, we know it's not the antidepressants doing this because it's the depression that makes people suicidal, right? And then secondly, they said, in order to, cover our ass, basically, we're going to require that every time you start a patient on one of these meds, that you have to call them a couple of days later to make sure that they are not suicidal and then document it, right? So in other words, they're thinking, yeah, bullshit. We're just going to protect ourselves. We're still going to prescribe these meds. And then, I, at the time, didn't know what to think, but I did, like, it was really hard for me to believe that a drug could affect how you think or your behavior, right? And so then a couple years later, I was working with teenage girls in a different kind of setting, and I was taking everyone off medicines. And I had, one teenage girl, and she told me that she was thinking about suicide every day. And it started after she was taking this antidepressant. So I took her off of it, and then she told me that she stopped thinking about suicide. So I started asking all the other girls, because many of the girls that came in and were my patients, they were on antidepressants.
Which ones? Which ones were the main?
Well, they're all really the same, but like, Celexa, Lexapro, Prozac, Paxil, those were.
What about Xanax?
Remeron. Well, Xanax is not an antidepressant. That's a benzo, like a tranquilizer, like Valium.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not into any of that shit. But if I'm going to go to Kazakhstan and it's a 15-hour flight, or I'm going to go to Dubai, I need a Xanax. I swear to God, man, I went to Kazakhstan like 6 months ago, and it was a 12-hour flight to Istanbul, I think, and then another 5-hour flight to Kazakhstan, almighty Kazakhstan. And I took a Xanax to Turkey, from LA to Turkey, and then another one from Turkey to Kazakhstan. And that shit wiped me out.
Wow.
It was. I hope you didn't.
I hope you didn't wet your pants, Eddie.
You know what? When it comes to overseas flights, give me the best shit. And I'm glad you said that Xanax isn't an antidepressant. It makes me feel a lot better, because I did feel guilty, because I'm like, I hope I don't want to kill myself.
Well, look, if it, you have an occasional situation like that, it's low risk. It's probably not gonna but don't ever get in the trap of taking drugs like that on a regular basis, because they're very addictive, and if you can have withdrawal seizures and all kinds of nasty stuff.
Yeah. I'm into fasting. I fast every day for 18 hours. I'm into that. I'm not trying to get addicted.
No. I know you're health conscious, and I know I've been on those kind of plane rides, and I can't, no matter how long I'm on a plane, I will not fall asleep. Like I've had 24-hour travel to Thailand, didn't get one wink of sleep.
Xanax, you'd be out. You would be out. I was so, it was like I just teleported. I'm like, we're already here? He goes, oh, we're descending. And I'm like, well, we're descending. Wow.
Yeah, no, you were basically under anesthesia for that plane ride.
Exactly. Okay, so you were talking about your patients that were suicidal while they were on SRIs, but once they got off, they stopped thinking about suicide.
Yeah. I mean, so there's got to be, it's crazy, but I've observed it too many times. I mean, there's other evidence. Obviously, that's why the FDA even acknowledged it. So, these drugs can affect your thinking and your behavior in that way. And then since then, I've learned that actually a certain type of antibiotic also has this effect. The fluoroquinolones, which are those nasty ones that can cause your tendon rupture and things like that as well.
What I think is probably the best knee slice in the game, it's called a row drag. Super simple, awesome combo. Before we get to the truck, throw a little pass on top of that. You know what I mean? So we're gonna get really good at that truck transition. How about you get really ninja with the row drag? The knee slice. Push them down, butterfly, boom, bam, boom. Here. 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 And then the fishnet, knee to the stomach, low the handle, break the frames, and then boom. Pull this out, grab my forearm, pop. Pop. That's all the best shit from Twister Side Control right there in one flow. You guys want to go back and forth a little bit? Ready? Let's go.
It seems like, I mean, everything, like for instance, like I'm in that mode where anything that is mainstream narrative, like anything that you keep hearing from doctors all the time, you got to question. And the one thing I'm like, wait a minute. We always hear that you have to drink 8 glasses of water a day. And that's, once I thought, I'm like, you know what? That always sounded like too much. So just without hearing any information or anything, I'm thinking, I bet, what if drinking too much water is bad for you? I go, because they all say that, hydrate, drink 8 glasses of water. And then now you're seeing all these, I don't know if the reports are true, but you're seeing all these reports that if you're drinking water, too much water, it's like solvent, it's clean, it's like washing out all your good stomach acids, and you're not supposed to be drinking while you eat. And if you're going to drink water, it's got to have electrolytes in it. It's got to have sea salt in it. Like just straight water is actually not good for you. What do you know about that?
All right. So, well, let me unpack those things, because this is an area where there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of confusion. And hopefully I can actually clear up a lot of this. So drinking too much water, to drink too much water, that would actually have a negative effect on your health. And it can, in fact, it can kill you having too much water. There's a rare condition called psychogenic polydipsia where people will just, they'll drink out of the toilet, like any water that's near them, they're drinking it. They'll drink out of a puddle, whatever. It's kind of crazy. And they dilute the salt so much in their body that they end up herniating their brain. Right. So that is a real thing. But they have to drink massive amounts. We're talking like 10, 15, 20 gallons in a day for that to happen. So it'd be next to impossible to even do that unless you had this rare condition.
Yes.
If you drink 8 glasses of water, so now so here's the problem with that is, like, you're saying that a 300-pound, bodybuilder should be drinking the same amount of water as a 90-pound, 70-year-old woman. They should both be drinking 8 glasses. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So, and then also just from day to day, your body needs different amounts of water. You mentioned about food, like, you're right. If you eat raw food, for example, which has a high water content, like fruit, many fruits have over 90% water. If you drink water while you're eating raw food with a high water content, you will dilute the nutrients and it might affect your absorption. But on the other hand, if you're eating cooked food, which is dehydrated, depending on how it's cooked, like obviously not if it's soup, but if it's, roasted or fried, it's very dehydrated, then you need to drink some water with it to kind of make up for the water that you dehydrated out of it by the cooking process, because your body is really set up to eat things in a raw state optimally, right? Because that's the way they are in nature. Not saying you shouldn't cook your food, because that may be an advantage, but just realize that if you're eating cooked food, you can drink some water with the food without affecting your digestion or anything like that. But if you eat raw food, you want to pause drinking fluids before and after the meal for maybe a half hour, something like that, because you're getting big doses of water with the food. Now, so back to the, like, how much water does your body need in a day? So first of all, if you drink too much, I doubt it's going to cause a problem. Like, unless it's, like I said, 10 gallons too much. But that's because your body, especially your kidneys, but also through your sweat and your breathing, can control how much water you lose or keep. And so your kidneys, for example, when they filter your blood and make urine, they can put salt in the urine, or they could put water and no salt in the urine. Like, they can make it so dilute there's practically no salt into it. So your body won't lose salt because you're overhydrated. Your body can regulate that and just get rid of water if you have too much.
When your pee is clear as opposed to yellow, like a dark yellow, the darker the yellow, the more salt in your pee? Or is it the other?
Not necessarily, because the salt doesn't give it that color. It's the nitrogenous compounds like urea and perhaps other waste products that give it the yellow color. But you can measure the actual salt concentration in your urine with a lab test, or you can look at the specific gravity, which gives an estimate, because it's the amount of solutes dissolved in the urine, and it's just a ratio of the density of urine to water. So you could definitely assess that, but I would just say trust your body, that your body's going to regulate your fluid balance as optimally as possible. Now, there's two other things. So one is, in my experience, and also this is pretty consistent with some epidemiologic studies in the literature, most people are chronically dehydrated. Their body doesn't have quite enough water, and it's not because and they're probably not drinking 8 glasses a day, but also the way you drink water affects what your body does with it. If you drink too much water too fast, your body will just dump it, and you'll just pee it right out, and your body won't gain any water overall. So I advise people, because this is what it shows from the anesthesiology literature, is that if you have 8 ounces or less in 30 minutes, your body can absorb all that water. So however much water you're going to drink, try not to chug more than 8 ounces at a time, because then your body's just going to end up dumping it. It also depends on, are you drinking things that are diuretics? Like, not even just taking a diuretic pill, but if you drink a lot of caffeinated beverages, energy drinks, juices, sodas, those things all have a diuretic effect. So even though you're drinking fluid, you're actually going to pee out possibly either as much as you drank or even more than you drank because of the diuretic effect.
Energy drinks and like vodka, you put those together, man, you're peeing every 10 minutes.
That's right. Yeah, because alcohol inhibits one of the enzymes that allows your urine to concentrate. And so it basically, it inhibits antidiuretic hormones, so it makes you diurese. And that's why, you have to pee a lot when you drink alcohol. And caffeine has the same effect. It's just not quite as potent as the alcohol. Slightly different mechanism.
Combined, it's a deadly combination. Now,
yeah, absolutely.
In the same vein as if they're telling us to drink 8 glasses of water, I'm already thinking it's probably 3 glasses of water. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, listen, it could be 3. It could be 3 for some people, and it could be 11 for other people. Like, it depends on, like, if you're a landscaper during the summer and you're drenching 2 pairs of clothes every day, you'd probably need more than 8 glasses.
Yeah, but
right
now when we get to the 3 recommended meals a day, we know that's too much, right?
that's not how people ate in nature. But let me just finish with the water, because there is a way to know exactly how much water to drink. And that is by listening to your thirst. So like when I have actually a workshop and a protocol about this, of how to reestablish your proper hydration and your thirst mechanism. And because of our modern lifestyle, mostly, we have basically lost touch with our thirst, and nobody knows how to drink. And even doctors, they lost touch with their thirst, and they want to make this ridiculous blanket statement that, you should have this many glasses of water. But that doesn't account for all the variables that change the amount of water you need on a daily basis. I mean, people who are healing need more water. People who are having an acute illness like diarrhea or fever, they need more water because they're losing more water, right? But when they recover and they're healthy again, then they don't need as much water. So if you rely on your thirst and you're in touch with your thirst, you're always going to know the exact right amount of water, because your body is going to tell you when to drink more. And if you're not thirsty, then you don't need it.
Now, what's the best water and the worst water? Is distilled water the best water? I mean, obviously tap water is crap, right? I mean, it's got chlorine and fluoride.
Well, yeah. So I would say probably the best water would be, natural artisanal spring waters, but it can't be like mixed with an aquifer or groundwater, because that'll contaminate it. So most springs that spontaneously come out of the ground could be like this. So you can have it tested to know for sure. So that's the water.
What brand would you recommend? I like this brand here. This it's called.
Well, I recommend finding a.
Check this out.
Yes.
Like, this is the one I love because it's in glass, and it does say spring water. They could be lying, but this tastes so good to me.
Yeah, Eddie, that's what I buy when I travel.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are like some websites where you can find a spring that's near you, like that is publicly accessible, and you can just go there and fill up the water yourself.
What about like Avion, like Crystal Geyser? I feel like now that people are starting to figure out that drinking anything out of plastic is bad, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's been shown that there's lots of chemicals that leach from the plastic into the water. So I wouldn't, other than if it's the only water available, like, perhaps if you're traveling in the air or something like that. I would never recommend any water in a plastic bottle, because even if the water itself is good, it's going to absorb things from the plastic that's going to contaminate it. So I agree with you there.
The crazy thing is that any liquid tastes better in glass than it does in plastic. And why do you think that is? I
think it's because you're tasting the plastic chemicals.
Yeah, that could be it. I actually think that, you believe that we're like an electrical being, right? And we have like invisible, like torus field.
Well, it doesn't require belief. Just go get an EKG and you can see that.
Totally. So we're electrical, like everything's electrical. Like, so I think.
Every one of our cells is like a mini battery.
And like our taste buds have to be like there's got to be so much electricity going through your taste buds and your mouth and your tongue. So I think I have no proof, no studies, nothing, but this is what I think, because there's such a big difference between drinking water out of a glass as opposed to like a plastic cup. Big difference. Same water. I don't know if it's that you're tasting the plastic, or that the plastic interrupts and interferes and stops the electrical current. Like the glass, when you're drinking, whatever electrical current is going through it, like somehow the glass is
well, no, glass and plastic are both insulators of electricity, though, so they don't have very different electrical properties, but
doesn't lightning hits sand, doesn't that turn into glass?
Well, I mean, glass is made from sand. So that's true, but that would just be the heat of the lightning, right? Because, I mean, the way they make glass is they take sand, they purify it, and then they put it in these furnaces and fuse it into glass. And they add some other agents to it to give it different properties.
So you don't think that there's something to that, like the electric?
No, there very well could be something. Like it also could be, how electromagnetic radiation, like light, goes through glass versus plastic and interacts with the water. Like we know that water absorbs infrared light.
I'm not a beer guy at all. I think beer tastes like shit. But if I'm going to drink beer, it's got to be out of a glass. It can't be out of a plastic bottle.
Yeah, no, it definitely takes. Well, you could have beer in a plastic cup. I don't know that any come in a plastic bottle, but
when you go to Raiders games, they don't sell bottles. They'll sell you a beer in a plastic bottle.
Oh, I think I might have seen that before at.
But no one likes the taste of it, and it's. Yeah. I think I'm telling you, I'm not a scientist, but I think the plastic it stops the electricity from going through, and it interferes with your taste bud electro currents.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know shit. I don't know nothing. I'm just.
I'll see if I can come up with some experiments to test that, Eddie.
And then with the 3 meals a day and the food pyramid, that's why I'm doubting this 8 glasses of water thing. It's like, wait a minute, because we know 3 meals a day, that's too much. Because I had about 3-4 years ago, I had some serious stomach problems. And there was a guy in the jiu-jitsu community who's a very famous guy in jiu-jitsu. He ended up getting stomach cancer. And I was having stomach problems and having trouble sleeping and acid reflux and constant burping and hiccups. I would just have hiccups. And my stomach, there was always this burning sensation in my stomach. And I was getting worried. I was ignoring it for a while, hoping it would just go away on its own. But it didn't. My stomach, I would get these burning sensations in my stomach. And I thought, damn, I'm afraid to go to the doctor. They're going to tell me I have some kind of cancer or something. And then that's when I started looking into fasting. And then it made sense to me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm working my stomach too much. Let me try this. So then I started intermittent. How do you say that?
Yeah, I call it intermittent eating because fasting is when you don't eat at all.
Yeah.
But I know that's the common parlance.
Yeah. So once I started fasting, within 2 months, my stomach just healed, and my stomach's like brand new now. It's perfect. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. And it was because I wasn't giving my stomach a rest. So now I eat 1 meal a day. Once I started finding out first it was like GSP from the UFC said, I only eat 1 meal a day and I work out all day on an empty stomach. I'm like, what? How do you work out on an empty stomach? I didn't get it. And then you hear DK Metcalf. He's he's such a specimen. He plays for the NFL. Dude's like 6'4" and runs like a 4.2 40. He's the ultimate specimen. He says he eats 1 meal a day. And I'm like, what? And then Mikey Musumeci, another jiu-jitsu guy, says he works out all day, empty stomach. He just drinks water with some salt in it. And he has 1 meal a day at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, I got to try this shit. I got to try it. So then now I'm all about it. 1 meal a day. My stomach is fucking perfect, man. And so it's like it's infuriating that they've always pushed 3, like breakfast is like a joke. Why would you want to break a fast? You want to keep that fast going. The longer the fast, the better, right?
Well, you know that breakfast is kind of partly of a manufactured meal, that only really existed since Kellogg's, came into being in the early 20th century. But, it's really interesting because when you eat a meal, obviously you have to digest it, right? And that requires a lot of your body's resources. So it pretty much devotes, a significant portion of resources to digestion. So if you have to do digestion and work out at the same time, your body's going to have less resources to work out because it's doing the digestion, right? And this is why, like you think, there's no energy source or whatever without eating a meal, but that's not true. Probably actually energy doesn't even come from food at all, but you still, your body stores lots of nutrients and you can use those at times when you're not eating. It's not like you digest food and it immediately goes to work. Yeah. You digest it, right? Then it gets stored and then it goes to work when it's called upon. It's more like how it goes on. So the same thing with general health problems is that if you're eating throughout the day, like, 3 meals, it's like pretty much once your body finished digesting one meal, then you're giving it another one and it has to repeat it, again, and then do it a third time. And some people, who are grazers, their body's digesting like all the waking hours. So that just doesn't leave as much time and resources for your body to do other stuff like healing your gut or any other part of you, or like growing muscle tissue, whatever you're doing. So, I think, at least hypothetically, that's the reason for some of the benefits. And, it's also interesting if you look at the animal kingdom, because you have a very different behavior between carnivores and herbivores with respect to how frequently they eat. The herbivores, like grazers, they pretty much have to eat around the clock to get enough, food mass in them to sustain their bodies. Like gorillas are like this too. They, eat just in terms of pounds, like huge amounts of food a day. It takes them all day to eat that. Whereas carnivores, hunters like lions or whatever, they don't even eat every day. They might digest a meal and then rest for several days before they hunt again and eat anymore. And so I don't know what the optimal, is for us, but it's probably closer to the carnivore than it is to the grazers.
Now, in the natural wild kingdom, what percentage of animals do you think are omnivores, part carnivore, like both? Because
I think omnivores is the smallest category of animals. In terms of non-human species. I mean, yeah, like there's debate about humans because we can't just observe humans in nature and see what they eat. Like that's how we determine what the animals eat. Sometimes, the people have been wrong, like chimpanzees, for example. Like a lot of people still think that they're herbivores and just eat fruit, but that's not true. They actually eat insects like termites, and they also hunt. They hunt monkeys principally. And they spend a lot of effort to do their hunting. So they're really omnivores, even though people consider them herbivores. But obviously, ruminants, are obligate herbivores.
What did you just say?
Ruminants, like, cattle, deer, elk.
Never heard that word before.
Buffalo.
I never went to college. I graduated high school early. I had to get the hell out. I took extra auto shop classes so that I could graduate midterm at my senior year. So I never heard that word before.
Well, look, you learn a few fancy words, but you learn a lot of things that aren't true. So, I think you had the better deal.
Now, would you say distilled water is good or bad? Is it the best kind of water, or like?
Well, I mean, like aside from natural spring water that is clean, yes, distilled or reverse osmosis, those are both ways to purify the water where there's no bad stuff in it. So I'm fine with either of those. Like, so if you live in the city and you only have tap water, that's definitely the way to go. One of those two. It's going to be a lot less expensive than buying, the bottled spring water for all your water supply.
Okay.
And plus it's, you can use it for cooking as well, for washing vegetables, all that kind of stuff. You shouldn't use the regular tap water for, even for showering. I would at a minimum recommend, putting an activated charcoal filter on your shower head. At least gets rid of some
I just
stuff.
put a new shower filter in today. My
nice
filter was I've been using shower filters for 25 years.
Yeah, I'm lucky now because I've got spring water that comes into my house, so I don't have to do anything to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's I only had this for the last couple of years in my life. I never had that before, but yeah, I definitely am a big fan of distilled water. And also, like, I don't think you need to add any salt at all to your water, because if you look at mineral water, the actual amount of salt in it is really tiny. And your body is not going to lose any salt from drinking distilled water because that's not how your body works. Like any minerals that get secreted into your gut to increase the concentration of the water, they get reabsorbed right back in with the water. So you're not going to lose any minerals drinking distilled water. You're supposed to get salt and minerals from food. And the amount, like if you were to get all of the salt requirement that you need from water, you would not like the taste of the water. It'd be way too salty.
Well, what I do is my last meal of the day, or like I eat like around 5, in between 4 and 7, in between one. And then, so basically, I go from 7 to 1 the next afternoon. And the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I'll drink like 3 ounces of water with a pinch of sea salt or Himalayan red salt. Some guys on Instagram recommended that, and I go, okay, electrolytes. So there's nothing wrong with that, though, right? Just a little.
It's not harmful. It's not going to be harmful unless the salt is contaminated with heavy metals. So, which is something you should be a little bit careful about. But no, it's not going to harm you. That doesn't matter. But it's not going to be harmful, but it's not necessary.
I can control what I put into my mouth. I can control what I feed to my child. I can control how I grow my food and if I want to spray pesticides or not, but I cannot control the experiments over my head.
Within an hour, it spreads out, it creates a blanket.
We're in a war. This is a war against me, you, our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. This is war raged upon us.
These programs consist of spraying tons of patented aerosol pollutants into our skies without public consent. This includes aluminum, barium, strontium, and more.
It's targeting your food, your water, and it's coming in multiple different ways.
If people want to know if this is a real thing, states have bills to ban it.
I think there are now 32 states that have taken an attempt at this. This has become a huge issue.
If your average citizen knew the truth of what's going on and what they're being exposed to without their consent, they would be outraged and they would take action.
I don't want some creep ramming chemicals down my throat without my permission.
We need to prosecute those people that are doing it.
Do we stand in one spot and say enough is enough, and if they don't listen, we take it to the next step?
You've been doing this for a while?
Yep.
Long time. People do care.
Yeah.
We care deeply.
I know that.
So we're now getting really involved, and now we're going to bring something legal against your company.
Actually, some of the pink Himalayan salt has been shown to have high heavy metal levels, as well as sea salt, and there could be microplastics. So there are some testing results available out there that you can look into, but I can tell you that there are 2 brands of salt that definitely do not have this problem. And that's Baja Gold and Colima.
Baja Gold and Colima?
Yeah, Colima, Colima. It's actually, that salt is from Mexico.
They don't sell it at Trader Joe's?
They might. These are like widely available. They're on Amazon, probably might even be on Walmart.com. So I'm sure that they carry them at some of those retailers.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about is Planned Parenthood. Like we're getting back to the organ harvesting. That's another level of the organ harvesting, right? Is
well, genocide.
Yeah, like if they're pushing. It seems like.
Oh, you're talking about aborted fetal tissue?
Yes, it seems like if you get an abortion, if the abortion is early, they use the placenta or whatever. It's not like. But the further along the pregnancy is, like if some, girl gets an abortion at 6 months, that they could use those organs. And the allegation is that they're like pulling out the baby alive. And like the girl thinks she had an abortion, but they're harvesting the organs and making money that way through.
Yeah. So Eddie, you're right. I mean, it's a lot. What we talked about before with, organ transplant is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's not just with aborted fetuses. So when I first worked in biotech, I worked at this company, Genzyme, and they were building a bioreactor to manufacture this using like basically GMO technology, but they were still selling it this old-fashioned way when I first started working there. And it was a protein that is supposedly, absent with a certain genetic disorder called Gaucher's disease. And they were purifying it from aborted fetuses. Now they were getting the fetuses from France, and they were facing some kind of political backlash, which is why they invested like huge amounts of money to build this factory to make it using recombinant DNA technology instead of purifying it from fetuses. But this just, tells you that essentially the fetal tissue, right, is being sold. Now they will admit that it is being sold. They'll say it's for research purposes, and they'll try to downplay the actual amount of money that they get for it. But given what I said about that drug, for that drug company that I used to work for, right, I know that at least some of these materials are being used for commercial products that are making a profit, like in that situation. Now, if we talk about birthing, it's actually even worse because one like C-section, I think they can make more than $10,000 selling the afterbirth, the cord blood. Like they in the hospital they clamp the umbilical cord right away after birth. That is to the baby's detriment. I mean, there's still blood in there that would go into the baby, and stem cells and other things from the mother. But they clamp it early because that blood is worth big bucks because it has those cord stem cells, and they can sell those at a profit. So they sell all the products of conception, and there's a little trick of legal language on the consent form which gives them the authority to do this, because and you can look at anybody who's getting a surgical procedure where they're going to take something out of your body, look at the consent form, and there'll be a sentence at least that says you authorize the hospital to dispose of. And those, if you look at dispose of in a legal dictionary, it means basically to give to someone by disposition of will. So like in your will where you give away things, that's what that means, is I give it to the hospital, and then it becomes their property, and so then they can do whatever they want with it, including sell it. They do this also with circumcisions to sell the foreskins. So, and they may very well do this with other types of surgical procedures, but those ones I've looked into.
So that becomes.
I don't think they use the organs for a transplant.
You don't think, huh?
I don't think they would use fetal organs.
Like if they're using. I mean, they could. I've not. It's possible. Like I haven't heard of this, but it's certainly possible. I saw it on Instagram. I mean,
well, if you find that poster,
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, it makes sense if they're like trying to pass laws to make it okay to have like a 8-month abortion or 7-month. Like, why would that even be in the conversation? If you're gonna have an abortion, have it right away. If a guy nutting you, have the abortion right away. What do you wait 7 months for?
Look at what happened in China due to the one-child policy, right? You had a lot of infanticide. And, if you look at the origins of Planned Parenthood, right, which is the main organization that is responsible really for abortion, at least in the United States, it was founded on the principles of genocide, right? They were expecting uneducated, low income, and black women to get abortions, right? When they actually had genocide, right, laws on the books in the United States in the early 20th century until the 60s and even 70s, I think, in California, where they had, people who were in a certain category, right, like of mentally ill or developmentally disabled, they were sterilized without their consent at all. And so that's what's really going on here. And so the goal of that is to, kill as many children to prevent those bloodlines from proliferating into future generations, right? That's what the eugenics agenda is about. So anything that supports that should not be surprising. Supposedly within the last year, I believe, the Planned Parenthood headquarters, which I think are in New York City, they took away like certain things that were referencing Margaret Sanger, their founder, because she, in her writings, you can just verify right there, because she wrote these books and essays, talks about eugenics, talks about like black people being inferior and all of this. And they want to distance themselves from that because they don't want people to know the truth about what their real mission is about.
Now, cremation. We were talking earlier about McDonald's, Jack in the Box, Carl's Jr. They make so many.
Are you gonna go into this conspiracy about the amount of bodies is not accounted for with the number of grave sites?
How come they're not building mad cemeteries everywhere? Aren't like billions of people dying all the time? Where are these new cemeteries?
The death rate is 1 per person.
So yeah, I was about to get too crazy. Maybe I should tone it.
No. Look,
cremation is like, what if they're not cremating your body? What if they're just giving you a what do they call those, urns or urns, or what do they call urns with where your grandpa's ashes are in? What if those are just like random wood?
Yeah, they could be ashes of anything, right? It'd be hard to tell. There'd only be indirect methods to try and assess that. But yeah, I mean, I have heard this, idea that almost no new cemeteries have been built, and like there's data on the number of cremations that occur. And if you look at just the amount of people that died in the last century and the capacity of crematoria and graveyards, that there seems to be a huge gap, that there's possibly millions of dead bodies that are unaccounted for as to where they've been stored. So I've heard this, and it's pretty convincing that there is a mismatch, but I don't know what the answer is as to, so you could, there are definitely ideas like this, have they been, chopping up and cooking those bodies and sneaking them into McDonald's burgers or into dog food or agricultural feed or, stuff like that, or something else, who knows?
Yeah, who knows, but I wouldn't doubt it. Now, what's your latest assessment on fenbendazole and ivermectin in regards to helping cancer patients? Is that legit or is that all bullshit?
It's all bullshit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Those are basically pharmaceutical poisons, and I believe they've been propped up to misdirect people and keep them from the real answers about health.
So
it's already known that there are many natural procedures that help people recover from cancer. Like some of these have been around for decades, like the Gerson method, for example.
And just fasting too, right? Just like if you got diagnosed with cancer, I've heard some doctors say the first thing you should do is not eat for 30 days.
Yeah. Probably 21 days. But yes, absolutely. Maybe 30 for some people. There's even a mainstream medical study where they have cancer patients that now they give them all chemotherapy, because if they tested fasting versus chemotherapy, fasting would win and they'd have to stop giving chemo. But in this case, they tested fasting plus chemo versus fasting plus, usual diet. And the fasting group had way better outcomes and way fewer chemo side effects. So yeah, fasting is definitely something that has a good track record. And there are many other things besides those two. So there's no reason to look into pharmaceuticals for that purpose when there's already enough natural things that have very strong track records. It'd be too risky to do something like that because, you know, if it doesn't work, then you have to, you know, you're in a more advanced stage and it might be harder to have success from something that does have a track record of success. And of course, one key thing about cancer is that almost in every case of cancer, there is a strong psychological component. And if you don't address that, you're not going to have the best outcome. So like that needs to be addressed in addition to like, or in conjunction with whatever, you know, physical health protocol you're doing.
I watched a video not too long ago where you ever watch those videos where like there's a girl and she asks Chat GPT like, you know, deep questions, and then
I mean, I've seen a couple of those, but I don't trust Chat GTP, so I try to avoid it as much as possible.
Course,
but it can bring up interesting things.
And one of the questions was like, what this girl asked Chat GPT, what are the 4 most important foods someone can eat? And Chat GPT said they called it the most electric foods, like something that resonates with your body as an electrical being. And Chat GPT said wild blueberries, raw sea moss, sprouted walnuts, and raw honey are the most electric foods. Does that sound right? Or
well, I mean, what does most electric foods mean?
That's a good question. It just seems like I'm not sure,
because without knowing a definition for that, then it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
because that's not a term that's used, right? You don't. I mean, say, oh, that's so electric.
Electric bioavailability. I don't know, but okay, forget about the electric part. Do those foods sound like they should be at the top of the list? Wild blueberries? No. Raw seed?
Not one of those foods contains complete nutrition for a human.
So would you say
like you couldn't survive on any one of those foods by themselves?
And you could survive.
So, but you know, it's like you can also like what you're asking me is, you know, it doesn't have a clear criteria like what would make the most healthy food or the best food. So, you know, in my opinion, I would say like a food that if there's a food that you could live off of just that food and be in good health, that's probably a superior food.
Which one is that?
Well, maybe eggs.
Eggs or meat, right?
Well, it depends on, you know, when you say meat, do you mean like a whole animal or do you mean like only, you know, New York strip steaks? Like, because if you say, yeah, a cow, like, yes, absolutely. You can just eat cows your whole life and be extremely healthy. If the whole animal, or at least, you know, all the edible parts of it, which is almost the whole thing. So, yeah, absolutely.
So if there was one food that you could survive on, it would definitely be, you would pick eggs, right?
Yeah, eggs, or I mean, if it was the overall category of beef or an entire animal, like, yeah, I would say those things.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to hear, actually.
No, I'm not saying that, you know, walnuts aren't a reasonably healthy food, or, you know, when we say wild blueberries, do you mean truly wild blueberries? Or do we mean engineered blueberries that's their commercial name, you know?
Yeah, totally. I get it.
Because, you know, all the fruits that you can get at the supermarket, none of those things existed in nature. They've all been engineered.
Yeah, like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and all that, right?
No, even blueberries. Like every single plant food did not exist in nature that way. They've all been engineered.
Didn't bears eat blueberries in the mountains?
Well, I'm not saying blueberries don't exist in nature, but not blueberries that are that size with that sugar content. They've been engineered to be, you know, like with fruit, generally speaking, fruit in nature, it will be largely made up of seeds with a little bit of fruit flesh around the seeds, and it will be either completely sour or maybe a touch of sweetness. that's what, like, look at what the original banana looks like. It's all seeds. Or like I have these wild grapes that grow around me, and we sometimes eat them. And it's like, you eat one grape and you get like one drop of juice, and then the rest is seed and skin. So like we tried to make juice out of it, and the juice was so sour we couldn't even tolerate it without adding sugar to it. So that's what fruit is like in nature. Now, over, the last hundreds of years since the agricultural revolution, people have been using like selective breeding and hybridization techniques to create these, sweeter, juicier, more flesh fruit, and all of the modern vegetables that we have that, just don't exist at all in nature. So, I mean, many of the fruits didn't exist in nature either, right? Like grapefruits are man-made, oranges are man-made.
I heard that oranges grow wild in one place only in the world, and that's Florida. Florida has wild oranges. That's the only place.
Yeah, I'm not positive about that, but I thought it was only mandarin oranges that were in the wild. So maybe it could be that. Yeah. It could be those.
Something about Florida, the location is like, that's unique weather, and the heat, the humidity. It's like right there in the center of like, Hurricane Valley. Before we go, I know you probably have to go. You've been really vocal about digital ID, and
yes, I have.
Can you just leave a final message on digital ID and what it means to humanity and society?
Yeah, well, digital ID is I would say really it is the necessary infrastructure for the full technocracy, which is a form of totalitarian control of society, because likely the government will not even require a digital ID, but they'll just assign one to you, like they've done this in at least one European country. I think it's Italy, and it's just a combination of your legal ID and your biometric data. So like a face scan, like that face scan they do at the airport, which you should all opt out of. It's not mandatory. So once you have a digital ID, then all of the systems that you interact with are going to start requiring it. And at first, it'll just be a convenience thing, like it already is. Like some apps like offer you to scan your face so you don't have to use two-factor ID, which is a pain in the butt, right? So it gives you convenience. And then after a while, it'll be next to impossible to do any business without it. And then it'll effectively be required. So this will happen like in the banking industry, like in Vietnam, where they closed 90-something million accounts because people didn't register their biometric scan with their bank account.
How did they resolve that though? Like the people just bowed down and just said, okay,
well, they froze the accounts, and then the people still had an opportunity just to scan their biometrics if they wanted to get their account unfrozen. I'm not sure how if it's ended or if they've seized the funds or what from those accounts, but basically the people are in a position where if they don't play ball, they lose whatever is in those accounts effectively. And but they'll do this on social media, right? They're already starting to do this in the UK
and in Melbourne. They're in the process
in Australia.
Yeah, Melbourne is like.
Yeah, well, this is happening all over the world, like, in lockstep, right? Just like the COVID lockdowns. And so you can, generate lists of countries for all these things that I say that are going on. But, so then once you do that, right? So imagine if you have to, when you do social media, you have to use your digital ID. So you're not anonymous and that ID is also tied to your banking. So let's say that we get a law like they have in England right now, where it's illegal to have hate speech on your social media. And they've been arresting like 30, 40, 50 people a day since they enacted this law in the UK, right? Like one guy he vacationed in the US, did some target shooting with shotguns, had a snapshot of him holding a shotgun. And when he went back to England, he was arrested at the airport for violating this hate speech social media law, right? So imagine now they know you did that because your digital ID is attached to it, and then they fine you, but since it's tied to your bank account, they just take the money out of your account. So they don't send you a fine and then let you, contest it in court or anything. They just take the money. Or they prevent you from using your account for 5 days.
How do they attach that to your bank account? I don't get that. Where's the connection?
Well, because they have this in Mexico right now. I think you might know Dave Weiss.
Yes.
So he lives part of the year in Mexico, and he was trying to set up a bank account to move some money down there to make a purchase when he's in Mexico. And when he went to try and open up an account, they required a biometric scan. And the banks in Mexico, because Mexico, the government issued a law that digital ID is going to be required for everyone who lives there, but they don't have the money or the infrastructure to put biometric scanners all over the country, right? So what they're relying on the private industry to do it. And this is the same way that they enforced many of the COVID lockdown rules, because the government was prohibited from doing it because of various laws. So they bribed companies to do it, and the companies would do anything basically for the money. So the government has incentivized banks to use digital ID for banking. So the banks actually invested and bought machines to do biometric scanning. And now they require anyone who opens up an account has to give their biometric scan to open the account.
That's
so Dave was unable
just a picture
to
of their face, like facial recognition.
It could be a facial. The ones that they're using now internationally is like the facial scan. Yes, that seems to be the most common for U.S. citizens. They also do iris scan. So like there's the World Food Program that's associated with the UN. If you're a refugee in Africa and you want to get food rations due to drought or famine, you have to do an iris scan in order to get your food rations. And then fingerprinting is the other one. So like in the European Union in October, they mandated now this entry-exit system. And anyone who is not an EU citizen who's traveling to any Schengen country in the EU, which is every place except, I think, like Bosnia and Ireland, and that you have to get a facial scan and fingerprints. So I'm not going to be, traveling to Europe under those circumstances, by the way. But that's what they're requiring. So it's the iris scan, fingerprints, and a facial recognition. I think the facial recognition is the most problematic, because if we look how they use that in China, is that pretty much they have cameras everywhere you go, any public space. And if you are, doing something in any public space, you'll be on that camera, they'll know who you are. So, if you pass by a statue of Chairman Mao and you give the finger, it's going to be caught on camera and you're going to be penalized for that. In fact, there was an artist in China who, as like an experimental project, he mapped out like a 2-block walk, that walking this crazy circuitous way, like taking 2 steps to the side, then a step back and then another step to the side, like to avoid being on a camera, to walk like 1 or 2 blocks in this town without being on a camera. And he led a group around doing that and filmed it. Interestingly, they were still on camera, but his camera, not the Chinese government's cameras. And he got in major trouble for doing that.
What if you wear one of those, rubber masks are becoming like super realistic. people are just going to start wearing rubber masks everywhere.
Well, I'm sure there'll be some ways to avoid it, but like there's already some technology to avoid license plate card readers, but they're essentially illegal. So I think it'll be like how it was. And it still is in some places, but it was illegal to wear a mask into places like a bank, or if you're at a public protest or a parade where you have a permit from the city. Like in New York, there were laws that it was illegal to wear a mask in those places. But they had to change it or have some way around it during COVID, right? Because they wanted everyone to wear a mask. So they could easily have a law, that says you're not allowed to, cover your face in public unless you have a religious exemption or something like a hijab. So maybe that's the way to do it. Like Kelly Brogan, she wore a hijab to fly so that they wouldn't give her a hard time about wearing a mask because they couldn't see what was under her hijab.
I mean, they pushed really hard for vaccine passports.
Burqa.
They pushed really hard for vaccine passports during the scamdemic, and it seemed like that fell apart.
I think that was them testing the digital IDs. And that's why I think they have the strategy where they're just going to issue the digital IDs. So they're not going to have you sign up for it. They're just going to, like I said before, right? A digital ID is a combination of two things. It's your legal ID plus a biometric scan that links to your legal ID, right? So this is how they're doing it in the US. They set up this TSA facial scanning program at the airports. Now, not every single person flies, right? But a lot of people fly, especially in the length of time they've had this. Now, that is a voluntary pilot program, but I almost never see anyone other than myself opting out. So what else do you give them when you go to TSA? You give them your legal ID, right? And this is why I think they made the Real ID such a big deal to finally enact this, because the Real ID is a federal ID. It's all of the states that participate in it, which is all of them. All the data goes into a federal database. So it essentially is a national ID. So every time you participate in that scanning and give your ID, that's your digital ID. So since the government has it, all they have to do is, one day send everyone an email and say, here's your digital ID. And you don't have to, that way you can't refuse it. It'll just be given to you because they already have your picture and your ID were given at the same place together, so they're linked, right? So that's why I think it's so important to refuse those. In fact, refuse every biometric scan. Like if you use your face to log into your iPhone, like stop doing that. If any app says, scan your face and it'll be a quicker login, don't do that. Reverse that. Take it out of there.
But
because
once you do it once, if you
they already
got that.
Well, it may be true that they already have it, but they can't move to the next step unless enough people assent. Like if enough people go along with it, then they're like, okay, now we can go to the next step. But if enough people refuse, they won't be able to go to the next step.
What if you have
I think if those vaccine passports that you mentioned, if they took off and were wildly popular, we would already have a digital ID.
Yeah. It just seems like when you look at your phone, they already have your digital. They're looking at you.
Well, remember that they need the biometric scan and the legal ID at the same time, and they have to be given to a government agency. They can't. So if Apple has it, they can't create a digital ID because they took your picture from Apple. Right? Because that's not linked to your legal ID and it's not taken by a government agency. That's why the airport is the most important, because there you have the government and you have those two things you're given at the same exact time. So that's what they really need. Now, I think with the private companies, remember I said once the digital ID is already enacted, it's going to be the private companies that enforce it, that make it where you can't do business with them without it. And so that's going to be like Apple. Like there'll be an iPhone that you can't put in your password, that you have to do your biometric scan.
Don't you think there's enough people that are aware of this that there'll be businesses that thrive because they don't require a digital ID?
Well, if I were going to assess the demand based on how many people who are opting out of the TSA photos, I would say there's not enough demand to run a business to make any money. So that's why we need people to refuse, because the more people that refuse, that will, one, signal to the government that it's going to be a lot harder to go along with their plan, and maybe they should scale it back and rethink it. And then two, if they do go ahead with it, there are going to be a lot of people that are just not participating, and that means that companies that have gray market solutions are going to be in demand, and that will incentivize them to do that. Like, I think, if you look at the developing world, we have a model for this, because there are a lot of disenfranchised people who don't have access to banking because they're too poor, but they're still doing business. And they're doing business because they basically created a black market, and they have people that go in between. So they have people with bank accounts who come and do business with them and do the banking for them, like for a fee, like a middleman. And this allows them to do business more privately and freely, like without regulation, but still engage with the banking system through, intermediaries that are sort of like, gray people. That, I mean, there's might be some risk, but if all of our systems get captured in the way that I think, the way that the elites want it to go, then that's how we're going to survive if we don't participate, is that we're going to develop essentially free markets or black markets outside of that system. And then there'll be some people that have 1 foot in and 1 foot out that will, be the key middlemen. And that'll be very lucrative for them, so that they'll undertake the risk because the profit will be there. And that whole system developing depends on there being enough people refusing and enough people unwilling to, be totally enslaved, in that totalitarian technocratic system. So that's why it's like, we'll slow this down. We could possibly turn it around, and at the very least, we'll incentivize solutions outside this system by refusing now.
Oh man, it seems like the controllers are seems like they're winning. It seems like it seems like inevitable that they're going to have total control. We're going to live in a total surveillance state. Andrew, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge. You're my favorite doctor of all time. How can my people find you?
AndrewKaufmanMD.com is my website. There's lots of free protocols and educational workshops there. And then definitely check out Dr. Andrew Kaufman on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, all your favorite places. I've got tons of content on a lot of subjects there. So
awesome.
Enjoy yourself.
Jump on it, guys. You won't regret it, man. Thank you, Andrew. We'll do it again, and you have yourself a good night. Thank you.
You too, Eddie.
The Jiu-Jitsu Dojo is the ultimate training ground for life. Jiu-Jitsu will accelerate the evolution of your being, your consciousness, your soul. Through this amazing art, you will prove to yourself that you can master anything you set your mind to.
Happy birthday, Eddie Bravo!
I leave for Brazil tomorrow. Are you the Fear Factor guy? I'm like 6 pounds over. Time to sweat it out. Just imagine someone that has no idea how different your game is.
I'll tell you what this weekend was, man. It was a culmination point where all your hard work comes to like one great moment in time. You showed that you're a fucking champion, guy who goes against convention. You created your own shit and figured interesting ways to get around problems in jiu-jitsu. It shows you that great things are possible if you work hard, if you dedicate yourself, and you use your creativity, and you push through. Your own human potential just goes up.
My 10th Planet Association has grown rapidly to over 70 academies worldwide, and their curriculums are all synced to 10th Planet headquarters located in downtown Los Angeles. I'm Eddie Bravo. I hope to see you on the mats.